Why some people keep going when others stop. What if the feeling that makes you want to quit is the same feeling every person experiences right before they break through? Picture someone sitting alone in front of unfinished work, a blank page, an untouched project, a skill they promised themselves they would learn. The excitement they felt weeks ago is gone. All that remains is resistance. They stare at the work and quietly conclude what millions of people conclude every single day. Maybe this just isn't for me. But what if that feeling doesn't mean what they think it means? We spend a lot of time trying to understand why some people keep going. We study their habits, their routines, their mindset, their discipline. And we almost always arrive at the same conclusion. They must be different, more resilient, more motivated, built differently somehow. But the research points somewhere else entirely. Because when you study the people who keep going, really study them, you find something unexpected. They are not experiencing less doubt, less frustration, less boredom, less resistance. They are feeling everything you feel. The difference is not what they feel, it is what they believe the feeling means. There is a process the brain runs automatically, so fast you rarely notice it, called emotional appraisal. Every time you experience a feeling, the brain immediately asks a question. What does this mean? And the answer it generates, the story it tells about the feeling, shapes everything that follows. For most people, discomfort is appraised as a warning. Something is wrong. This is too hard. This is not the right path. I am not the right person. And the behavior that follows that appraisal is completely logical. You stop. You retreat. You protect yourself from something the mind has labeled as a threat. Not because you are weak, because you are listening to a system that was designed to keep you safe. But here is what that system was never designed to distinguish: the discomfort of actual danger and the discomfort of growth. They feel almost identical, the same tension in the chest, the same urge to stop, the same quiet voice suggesting you turn back. But they are not the same thing, and your nervous system, without help, cannot tell them apart. Every skill has a curve, not a straight line upward, a curve. In the early stages, progress is visible. Everything is new. The brain is engaged. Motivation feels natural because novelty feels like progress. But there is a point, predictable, almost universal, where the novelty fades. The initial gains slow. The work becomes repetitive. The gap between where you are and where you want to be becomes visible. This is the point most people leave. Not because they lack talent, not because the path was wrong, but because the discomfort that arrives at this stage feels indistinguishable from a sign that they should stop. Psychologists call what happens in this phase the learning plateau, the stage where effort continues but visible progress pauses, where the work is happening beneath the surface in ways the conscious mind cannot yet see or measure. But the feeling it produces is one of the most convincing feelings available to a human being: the feeling that nothing is working. And here is what makes this so quietly devastating. The people who stop at this stage are not wrong to feel what they feel. The discomfort is real. The frustration is real. The sense of stagnation is real. What is not real, what the feeling cannot actually tell you, is what the discomfort means. Researchers studying cognitive reappraisal, the ability to consciously reinterpret an emotional experience, have found something remarkable. The same physiological state, the same racing heart, the same tension, the same unease, can be experienced as crippling anxiety or as focused readiness, not by changing the feeling, by changing the story told about the feeling. This is not positive thinking. This is not telling yourself everything is fine when it isn't. This is something more precise: the recognition that a feeling is information, but not always the information it appears to be. Think about someone learning something genuinely difficult, a language, an instrument, a craft, a new way of thinking. There is a stage in every one of these processes, without exception, where the person becomes acutely aware of how much they don't know, where the gap between their current ability and their desired ability feels vast, where the work feels clumsy and slow and unconvincing. Psychologists call this the valley of conscious incompetence, the stage where you know enough to recognize how far you still have to go, but not yet enough to move through it quickly. It is one of the most uncomfortable stages of any learning process, and it is also one of the most important, because it means something is happening, real learning, real reconfiguration, real growth that hasn't yet become visible. But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like evidence that you should stop. There is a reason certain people move through this stage when others don't, and it is not willpower. It is not discipline. It is not a higher tolerance for pain. It is a different relationship with the feeling itself, where one person experiences frustration and concludes, "This is a sign I'm on the wrong path." Another experiences the same frustration and concludes, "This is what the right path feels like right now." Same feeling, completely different meaning, completely different behavior. And here is what the research quietly reveals about where that difference comes from. It is rarely innate. It is rarely a personality trait you either have or don't. It is almost always learned, through experience, through reflection, through the gradual recognition that discomfort has shown up before, and that surviving it changed something. The people who keep going are not braver. They are not built differently. They have simply accumulated enough evidence from their own lives that discomfort is not always a stop sign. Sometimes it is a threshold. There is a particular kind of discomfort that deserves its own name, the discomfort of becoming. It arrives when you are genuinely in the process of changing, when old patterns are breaking down and new ones haven't yet formed, when you are no longer who you were and not yet who you are becoming. It feels like being lost. It feels like evidence that something has gone wrong, but it is actually evidence that something is going right. The problem is that the mind, without a framework for interpreting this feeling, defaults to its most familiar conclusion. Stop, retreat, return to what is known. And so people return, not to safety, to familiarity, which feels like the same thing, but isn't. A feeling is not always a message. Sometimes it is simply a feeling, and the difference between the person who keeps going and the person who stops is often nothing more than this: the quiet recognition that discomfort is not evidence of the wrong path. It is often the texture of the right one. This week, notice one moment when discomfort makes you want to stop. Don't act on it immediately. Don't fight it. Just ask one question. Is this discomfort telling me something is wrong? Or is this simply what this stage feels like? Sit with the difference, because the answer, quietly, changes everything. This content is based on established psychology and behavioral research. It is not clinical advice. What is something you stopped pursuing, not because you truly wanted to stop, but because the discomfort convinced you that you should? Leave it in the comments. Quiet patterns.